Morning, everyone. Got me mid-tea. Happy hump day. Welcome to the news agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined by the Mirror's climate crisis reporter, Rhian Lubin. First time on the show. Morning, Rhian.
Morning.
Now, this is the People's Paper Review, remember? So we want you to get into the comments, ask us your questions, whatever is burning a hole in your head or your personal atmosphere, ask us. We can't answer them all, but we will try to answer the best ones. So what have we got today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on news that 10% of Britain's care home staff still haven't had the coronavirus vaccine. And as a result, they are facing the sack by Sajid Javid, which means the care system is facing meltdown. Just a reminder, he is supposed to be the Minister for Social Care, not against it. But in news that affects the whole planet, world leaders have been pointing the fingers of blame at each other for not doing more on COP26 just before they fly home, having been at the climate summit for a mere 48 hours. So yesterday, Joe Biden accused China, one of the world's biggest polluters, of not showing up and claimed that America, another of the world's biggest polluters, was taking the lead. There's been an agreement on methane cutting targets of a third by 2030, but that's voluntary, not binding. And today, Rishi Sunak is going to be whizzing into COP with other finance ministers to talk about how to make capitalism greener, if that's possible. Now, Rhian, you're there. Well, what's going to be happening today and what's happening for the rest of the summit? What can we expect? More of the same?
Yeah, so Rishi Sunak is here today and he's speaking about how every British firm will have to publish their plans on how they intend to be greener and help Britain reach net zero by 2050. In terms of the rest of the summit, so just because the world leaders are jetting off on their planes today doesn't mean that these negotiations are over. It's actually next week where they will get down to these tougher negotiations, mostly behind closed doors, actually. So that's what's going to happen for the rest of the week. But today is the big day on finance, and they'll also be talking about this $100 billion to help developing nations cut their carbon emissions, which is already 3 years late. So that's what's happening today and for the rest of the summit.
And we're contributing to that 100 billion to help the rest of the world cut their emissions, despite the fact, well, at the same time as we're cutting our foreign aid budget, which they were using to help cut their emissions.
Yeah, and that's another great example. We're leading by example there. Yeah.
Yeah, and perhaps it goes some way to show how useful the world leaders are if the work only gets done when they've cleared off. Now, ask us your questions. What do you think about how COP26 is going? What do you think about the things you've heard out of there so far? Leonardo DiCaprio flew in yesterday, for once on a publicly occupied
Yes,
jet. Not
I think he learned from last time, didn't he?
he took a hint. I'm sure he was still in first class, and we've had a couple of these voluntary agreements on methane and on deforestation, though not everyone has sort of rode in behind them quite. But one of the things that Rishi is going to be discussing today, and which we've been briefed about overnight, slightly, but not in much detail, is how he is going to insist that all UK firms publish green investment plans every year in order to show that they're continuing to cut emissions and not causing them. And if they don't do it, apparently we're told they'll face sanctions, although we don't know what those might be. Now, last time I looked, Rhian, which was this morning when I Googled it, there were 4.3 million self-employed people in the UK, most of them driving diesel vans. And they're not quite as likely as, let's say, British Telecom or something, a big firm, to either have the resources or the public pressure or the help from a government to actually go green. So you're the climate crisis reporter. Is that kind of thing going to work, do you think?
I think, again, here with most of these announcements, it's the devil's going to be in the detail, isn't it? But you can't help but feel sorry for, self-employed people. And it doesn't sound like it's going to be a massive hindrance to them. And it just moves on to this. It's putting the onus on the individual again, isn't it, to do something if you're self-employed. So, I mean, I personally, until we see a bit more detail on how this is going to work, and there's definitely going to need to be some support for those self-employed people. But as you say, you could say, oh, I'm going to do X, Y, Z to be green. Are they actually going to be any sanctions? We don't know yet because they haven't said. So, yeah, it's a difficult one.
Yeah, and what might those sanctions be? And would a bigger business be able to negotiate their way out of some of those sanctions than, say, a smaller one?
Yeah, I mean, if it's financial kind of sanction, then a big corporation is obviously going to be fine, and it's kind of greenwashing in a way, which is spinning it to be more green than it actually is, and it's not fair on self-employed or smaller companies, is it?
No. Well, we have minimum wage rules, and there are financial sanctions for not paying equal wage to all your staff, and people still don't pay equal wages to all their staff. Now, Suzanne's comment there was just saying that she was pleased to hear that the world leaders are being served, and the delegates there as well, who are doing the hard work, are being served a plant-based menu during the convention. Now, I'm a bit unclear about this, Rhian, so I'm going to ask you to enlighten me a bit. You do hear an awful lot about people saying, I'm going to go plant-based to help save the planet, because greenhouse gases and everything not only emitted by cattle, for example, but also the business of processing the meat. But I've also seen that plant-based foods can be really, really super water intensive, and they are not necessarily the way to save the planet. Am I right or wrong? What should we be doing?
I'll just say this quickly, actually. It's quite funny. Something we spotted yesterday around this the conference was what was being advertised was a croissant or a bacon roll, and according to the carbon footprint, the bacon roll was better than the croissant. So
Oh dear, that's answered your question, Suzanne. We need to encourage them to eat more bacon rolls. That can't be right. Vegetarians and vegans everywhere are going to be throwing their hands up in horror. But the carbon footprint of a bacon roll is better than a croissant.
Oh, it was only slightly better because around the conference they've got the cafes and things, and every single item on there says how its carbon footprint. And somebody tweeted yesterday, and it was quite
maybe that's the answer to Suzanne's second question. Then the way of persuading people to do it is to put, like we do with calories and sugar and stuff, to put that on a label and say this is the carbon footprint of what you are purchasing.
Yeah, I think it's with all the kind of fake meat products. You do it should say on the labels. You can check, but again, it's putting the onus on the individual, isn't it, to make that choice? And I think that's where it gets a little bit unfair. There's so much pressure on us, and there's only so much you can do. But I guess just do your research if you're not sure. I'm off the top of my head not sure in terms of how these things are made, but I know some are definitely better than others. So I'd check the label.
Yeah, the one thing I know about it, and I'm not a vegan, and I've got to admit I've read it somewhere, is that some vegan substitute things have mushroom fiber in. The only way you can produce mushroom fiber on an industrial scale is with A, huge amounts of water, and B, chicken poo, which will have come from factory farm chickens. So just think about your mushroom fibers, everybody. Now, Joe Biden's having a pop at China for not turning up in person for COP26. It didn't even send a video message, Mai. I mean, the Queen managed that and she's not too well. Did they not put forward to reach zero carbon emissions by 2060 ahead of India, offering 2070 at least? England and the UK said 2050, right? Is that all right? Is that
yes.
correct?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, sorry, on that one.
So I think Mai is saying that China has done a bit better than India.
Yes.
And only slightly better than Britain.
Yes.
There's Joe Biden when he's trying
to keep himself up really this week, I think.
He's been a bit sleepy once or twice. Yes. But he's, there's a lot of criticism of China going on. China's argument is that, well, look, you have already polluted. You've already done all your coal burning and stuff, and you've achieved economic growth as a result of that. We want the same. Yeah. So you go and cut your emissions. We'll catch up with you quite quickly. We're not going to be as polluting for as long as you were. We're going to do it in a much shorter space of time and get there quicker. But I think I'm right in saying they're still saying that China's on course to be the biggest polluter in history by the time it's finished.
Yeah, I mean, especially if their target is way off ours, but then we historically are the worst and we started it all. And so I think I think we like to point the finger at China, as does the US. And it would have sent a really good message if they turned up to the conference. But I think it's good because these things do put pressure on other nations. And I think that's kind of the point. So we'll have to see.
Well, I think claiming America is really green is a bit of a stretch, especially if you ask someone like Sweden, they'll go, maybe not. Now, keep asking us your questions. What do you think about COP26 and how it's going so far? Are you happy to hear that they're busy blaming each other for how it's not going? Would you rather they were actually doing something? Maybe they'll do that in the next couple of weeks. What do you hope they'll achieve? Let us know, get into the comments, and the best ones come up on the screen. Now, speaking of green capitalism, and what Rishi Sunak is insisting capitalism can do to save the planet. Further in the paper, we report how a Labour MP's private members' bill to ban plastic in wet wipes is heading for its second reading in Parliament, but is very unlikely to become law without government support. Now, private members' bills are things that just get drawn out of a hat at the start of a parliamentary term. They get discussed. They have a possibility of getting on the statute books, but only if in the case of government has got a big majority, only if the government supports it by the end of that year. And usually it's just a way of trying to say there's huge support for this, we need to get it on the books, something that perhaps the government hadn't thought of. Now, Rhian, it says here in this copy that 90% of the 11 billion wet wipes sold in the UK every year have plastic in them, and that we all eat a credit card's worth of the stuff every week. We eat it. So are you getting any indication at all that the government might actually help get this on the statute books, seeing as the capitalists are showing no sign of sorting this out on their own?
It's funny because I feel like a few years ago this was such a hot topic, wasn't it? And everyone was really for banning the plastics in wet wipes. But at the moment, it's the statement Number 10 gave, I can't remember off the top of my head, but didn't seem like they were backing it massively. So, and also I'm going to show you what everybody who went to COP was given: some wet wipes.
Oh no!
It's not biodegradable, however. But
biodegradable isn't the same as breaks down totally. It just means they degrade. Is there any plastic in there at all?
I don't know, but it will still take a long time for these to break down. But it seems like something that lots of people would really welcome, I think. But it won't get through without government support.
Well, I'll tell you something. The Mirror, at the end of that bottom of that story, has published a list of plastic-free wet wipes. It's not conclusive. It's underneath that copy there, so it's probably got cut out in the crop. But it talks about Tesco's own brand, Andrex, Aldi's own brand, Boots, Wilko, Aldi, Canny Mum, Jackson's, Cheeky Panda, Bamboo Baby Wipes, Loopy Loo biodegradable water wipes, My Happy Planet, and Aqua Wipes. Doesn't mention Dettol. Maybe they are plastic free.
Yeah, I think also with the pandemic, you know, that's why we've been given these is when you're working in the conference centre, which it's quite it's not great in there. You've seen the queues. I'm not actually in there now because of how long it takes to get in. But yes, you can. That's why they're handing them out. But I think that's set everything backwards, hasn't it, with single-use plastic?
Yeah. It has. The pandemic generally, I think, has set stuff backwards in terms of plastic usage, because everyone wants a bit more things
even
wrapped in plastic.
PPE, everything.
Exactly. Now, Mike says Johnson is flying or has flown down for today's PMQs. I'm sure the delegates are watching with astonishment. Jeff Bezos has been in and out on his private jet. It's about the optics, isn't it, and how it looks. Why couldn't he just get the sleeper and come down overnight? Really?
Yeah, sleeper train's great. It's a bit cramped in there, but I think they'd probably give him a nicer room. I've been on it before, but
perfectly secure as well for a prime minister, and to get some kip. It looks like he needs it.
I saw something saying that Boris Johnson, it was eco-friendly fuel, and I'm not, you know, it doesn't look great, does it? So, and it's such a short, it's a very short flight, and I mean, lots of people had to fly up here because of the train chaos on Sunday as well. But it's not a good look. Neither is everybody flying in on private jets. So.
No, exactly. And I did see earlier in the week that the green, environmentally friendly fuel that Grant Shapps has been talking about they're using for COP26 is a mix of fuel that's been made like from sewage and cooking fat, and a third of it is your normal fossil fuel kerosene. So it's not 100% green and clean. Now, Suzanne, you're big on this morning, aren't you, Suzanne? You're really taking part. Talking of capitalism, an article in The Guardian suggested second home ownership contributes greatly to greenhouse gases. What are your thoughts? I haven't seen that article, but I'm imagining that's something to do with heating it when there's no one around and maybe you don't need to, and lots of people driving to and from it on holiday all the time. The one thing I think about second homes, Rhian, I don't know if you agree with me, you know, the average length of time a second home is occupied in a year is, do you know how many weeks a year do you think it is? People on average occupy a second home, not one they're renting out as a holiday home, not one that's operated as a business, not one with tenants, just your own second home that sits empty.
Maybe 25?
25 weeks a year, you think they're occupied?
I would if I had a nice second home by the city.
The average is
oh my gosh!
Which means if you've bought like a 500 grand second home somewhere on the coast, that is the most expensive holiday you will take in your entire life.
Yeah.
They're occupied for 2 weeks a year. And when they do it, they're sucking the community out of a place because they're denying that home to someone who lives in that area, whose family are in that area, whose kids could go to school. So if there aren't children going to the school, if there aren't people going to the dentist or the GP or the hospital, all those things get less funding from government. And so you just create a sink, a gravity well, which looks pretty on a picture, but has no community. My opinion, Caroline, about second homes, I'm afraid, is that they should be taxed out of existence because I think they're an abomination.
Yeah.
There you go. You asked me. What about you, Rhian? What do you think?
I mean, it'd be lovely, but I don't think anyone needs one. I think there are lots of people who don't have a home, so I don't think people should be entitled to having two. And there are plenty of other alternatives. What's wrong with Airbnb or booking somewhere, a nice hotel or something like that for a treat?
Or renting a holiday cottage that is occupied most weeks of the year would be, you know, I did that a lot. That's absolutely fine. David Cameron's got about 4 homes last time I looked. Anyway, let's move on. We do have another story, which is about the other aspect of some of these climate change things. We were talking earlier in the week on the previous news agenda how part of the problem is that the general public want things to be greener, but are less prepared really to actually experience any change in their own lives as a result of things being greener. So they might want to go vegan, for example, but they still want to eat bacon or something that tastes like bacon. But on page 15, the actor John Nettles of Bergerac fame has complained to local councillors in Devon about a new solar farm near his small holding on the grounds that there are too many of them nearby already, and it radically changes, I quote, the pastoral vista.
Oh, no.
Now, isn't that lovely? He's got a pastoral vista. Now, he makes no comment whatsoever, as far as I can see here, on what climate change might do to the pastoral vista in Devon, which is mostly clay and will get washed away, without solar energy to actually try and reverse some of those problems. But there we are. Now, Rhian, does he have a point? Are solar farms a terrible blot on the landscape? Are they a big problem? Or is this a case of midsummer NIMBYism? What do you think?
I mean, I don't live on a beautiful pastoral vista, so it's difficult for me to comment on that. But I do know that the UK needs to triple its solar. The solar energy industry says the UK needs to triple its capacity by 2030 to meet its carbon reduction targets. So it seems like it's an easy way. It's a really good way that we can do this. But if it's unsightly, or I mean, the other argument they're saying is that it's a loss of agricultural land. I also wonder, is this a generational thing? Because he's 77, and does he not think it's as important? I don't know. I know it's got a lot of the locals are backing him, but it's this thing between like city dwellers and
yeah, the solar panels do have to kind of go somewhere, and lots of people don't want them on their roofs. So where else are you going to put them?
If they're expensive as well, so I think people probably would be willing to have them on their homes if they're more affordable.
Yeah. Oh, phone ringing. The other thing, of course, is that although they do cover up a lot of agricultural land, which isn't being used for anything else, the farmer that owns it is getting quite a big subsidy. So it keeps that agricultural land not being built on, not being sold off. It keeps it for the next 10 years or so, and then maybe again the economy changes. Any farmer, they change what they make on their land over and over again. It's apples one year, it's crops another year, it's cattle a few years later, and they try and change it over the decades depending on the economic climate at the time. So if the economic climate right now is to get the most out of that land is solar farms, and I have them near where I live as well, I would say that that's the best way to preserve the pastoral landscape in the long term, because you can always take the solar panels out if you don't need them again, and the land is still there and it hasn't got houses on it by that point.
You think they're that unsightly? I don't think they're that ugly.
No, they have their moments, but this one apparently is pretty big. It's enormous, and there's already quite a few in the area. So his objection appears to be that he's had enough now. We've got quite a lot, and that's enough. We need to put them somewhere else. But they do have to go somewhere. And if you've got a bit of flat land that's facing south, that's where you're going to get the subsidies, aren't you? Now, keep asking us your questions. What do you think about solar farms in your backyard? And would you happily have one? Are you refusing to have one? Are you fighting one at the moment? Are you going green or vegan or vegetarian in order to save the planet? What do you think about what you could personally actually do? Let us know, and we will wrap up the questions at the end. But first off, there is some good news about what you can personally do about climate change, and here it is. Now, you might think it's all doom and gloom, and there's not much that we little people can actually do to make the world greener. But I have good news for you. Mars bars are set to become the world's first carbon-neutral chocolate by 2023. They already use renewable energy at the factory in Slough that makes them, and they plan to cut the footprint further by 20%, their carbon footprint. Now, Rhian, for people like me that love Mars bars, this is fabulous news, because a Mars a day really does keep the greenhouse emissions away. Are you as delighted as I am?
I'm not, I'm afraid, because I don't love Mars bar. I don't know if that's controversial, but they're always the ones left in the celebrations tub, along with bounties, which are awful. But
I know it's bounties, but I mean, it's a Mars bar, really. It's a Mars bar. What is it about the lovely chocolatey, gooey wonderfulness that you don't like?
I don't see what the fuss is about. I would eat one, but they're not my favorite. My favorite is Cadbury's, which is a shame because they're not actually.
Well, obvs. Yeah. Obviously Cadbury's, but if Mars can do it, then perhaps all the other chocolate bars can do it. And if perhaps Mars wants to get hold of Rhian and persuade her that she can eat Mars bars, perhaps they want to give her some free ones or something, then that would be absolutely marvelous. And if she doesn't want them, I'll have them.
They're trying to move to recyclable packaging as well for the chocolate bars, which is good because you can't do anything with the plastic wrappers that most of them are in. So that is very good, and I applaud that.
That would make a huge difference. No, thank you everyone for taking part. Thank you for watching. Thank you for Rhian for joining us from Glasgow. Get back to your terribly climate damaging walk to the conference centre. Let us know how it's going later on. Follow Rhian on Twitter and Facebook and so on if you want to find out what she's finding out when she's down there. And we'll join you again next Monday for another edition of the News Agenda. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.